Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Foundation. Cole Morrison stood at the edge of his property, watching the sun set behind the oak trees he'd planted 15 years ago when he first bought this land. At 42, he was a man who commanded respect without demanding it. 6'2", with graying temples that gave him a distinguished air, and hands that bore the calluses of both manual labor and military service. His construction empire, Morrison Developments, had grown from a single crew to the largest residential developer in 3 counties. Behind him, the house he'd built with his own hands sprawled across 5 acres. Every beam, every tile, every fixture had been chosen by him and Brooke. 20 years of marriage, 2 kids in college, and what he believed was an unbreakable bond. "Cole, dinner's ready," Brooke called from the kitchen window. At 38, she still turned heads with her auburn hair and green eyes, though Cole had noticed something different lately. A distance, a preoccupation that she blamed on stress from her real estate career. Their son Tyler was home from state for the weekend, while their daughter Emma was still at Northwestern. Cole had worked 60-hour weeks for 2 decades to give them everything he never had growing up in foster care. No family, no safety net, just his own determination and the skills the Army Rangers had drilled into him. "Dad, Mom said you're getting the surgery next week?" Tyler asked as they sat around the dinner table. The kid had Cole's build, but Brooke's softer features. "Minor procedure," Cole replied, cutting his steak. The doctors had found something during a routine physical, a small mass that needed immediate removal. "Nothing to worry about." Brooke's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and Cole caught something in her expression before she masked it. "Sorry, work call," she said, stepping away from the table. Cole had survived 3 tours in Afghanistan by reading people, by noticing the details others missed. His wife's body language had been screaming danger for months, but he'd ignored it, chalking it up to midlife stress. The successful businessman in him wanted to believe the best. The soldier in him was starting to prepare for war. Later that night, as Brooke slept beside him, Cole stared at the ceiling. He'd built everything for this family, the business, the house, the life. But somewhere in the darkness of their bedroom, a cold certainty was settling in his chest. Something was very, very wrong. Chapter 2. The Architect of Betrayal. Travis Kellner had perfected the art of being exactly what women needed him to be. At 35, he possessed the kind of polished charm that made clients trust him with million-dollar property deals and wives confide their deepest dissatisfactions. His family's real estate dynasty had given him connections, but his predatory instincts had given him power. He stood in the penthouse office of Kellner and Associates, looking out over the city skyline his family had helped shape for 3 generations. But it wasn't enough. It had never been enough. "The Morrison account is progressing nicely," his assistant mentioned, delivering the afternoon reports. Travis smiled. Brooke Morrison had walked into his office 8 months ago, ostensibly to discuss selling some of her husband's development properties. Within 3 meetings, Travis had mapped out her vulnerabilities like a military strategist. A woman who felt unappreciated, invisible beside her larger-than-life husband, hungry for the kind of attention Cole's busy schedule couldn't provide. Mrs. Morrison's quite motivated to close, Travis had told his business partner, Derek Walsh, over drinks. Derek, a financial advisor who'd grown up wealthy, but never quite wealthy enough, understood the game. Her husband's been so focused on building his empire, he's forgotten to tend his own backyard. The plan had crystallized over months. Travis wasn't just seducing a married woman. He was orchestrating the acquisition of Morrison Developments. Cole's company was privately held, worth an estimated $40 million, but the man was paranoid about outside investors. His wife, however, had been added to key business documents years ago, back when their marriage was stronger. "You know what Cole's problem is?" Travis had whispered to Brooke during one of their afternoon meetings. "He sees you as an accessory to his success, not a partner in it." Brooke had eaten it up, just as Travis knew she would. She'd begun sharing details about Cole's business operations, his plans for expansion, his vulnerabilities. More importantly, she'd signed papers, innocent-looking real estate documents that were actually shell company formations, trusts, and financial instruments that would, when activated, transfer significant assets. The surgery is next Tuesday. Brooke had texted that morning. Perfect timing. Travis leaned back in his leather chair. While Cole Morrison was under anesthesia, drugged, and helpless, the final transfers would complete. By the time the war hero woke up, he discovered that his wife and his company's future were no longer his to control. But Travis had underestimated something crucial about Cole Morrison. The man hadn't survived 3 tours in the world's most dangerous places by being naive. And he definitely hadn't built a $40 million business by being careless about who he trusted. Chapter 3. The Letter. Cole's surgery was scheduled for 7 a.m. at St. Michael's Hospital. As he was wheeled into pre-op, Brooke kissed his forehead with what seemed like genuine concern. "I'll be right here when you wake up," she promised. Dr. Patricia Reeves, the surgeon, was someone Cole had specifically requested, a veteran herself who understood the unique anatomy of soldiers who'd carried heavy gear for years. She'd found the mass quickly during the initial consultation and recommended immediate removal. "We'll have you back on your feet in a few days, Mr. Morrison," she assured him as the anesthesia took hold. Cole's last conscious thought was of Brooke's face and something in her eyes that his battle-trained instincts couldn't quite place. He woke to the steady beep of monitors and the sharp scent of disinfectant. His chest was bandaged, and pain medication made everything feel distant and cottony. The clock on the wall read 3:47 p.m. The surgery had taken longer than expected. "Mr. Morrison?" Dr. Reeves appeared beside his bed, but something was wrong with her expression. "How are you feeling?" "Like I've been carved up," Cole managed, his voice rough. "Where's my wife?" Dr. Reeves hesitated. "Left a few hours ago. Said she had an urgent business meeting." Cole's blood, despite the pain medication, began to run cold. "Business meeting? She did leave something for you, though." Dr. Reeves produced a white envelope from her coat pocket. "She asked me to give this to you only if she wasn't here when you woke up." I thought it was strange, but Cole's hands shook slightly as he took the envelope. His name was written across it in Brooke's handwriting, but something about the letters looked forced, deliberate. He tore it open and unfolded a single sheet of paper. "Cole, by the time you read this, you'll understand why I couldn't be there. Travis and I have been planning this for months. While you were building your empire, you forgot that empires can be conquered from within. The business documents I signed over the past 6 months weren't real estate contracts. They were transfer agreements. Morrison Developments is no longer yours. Neither am I. You were a good soldier and a decent husband, but you were never the partner I needed. Travis understands ambition in a way you never could. We'll be gone by the time you're released. Don't try to find us. You've lost this war before you even knew it was being fought." B. Cole read the letter 3 times before the full meaning hit him. Then he reached for his phone with trembling fingers and dialed 911. "I need to report theft, fraud, and conspiracy," he told the operator, his voice gaining strength with each word. "And I need Detective Ray Hoffman. Tell him Cole Morrison is calling in a favor." As he waited for the police, Cole's mind began working through the implications. His wife hadn't just cheated, she'd tried to destroy him. But Brooke had made a crucial error. She'd assumed that the quiet, methodical way he'd built his business meant he was soft. She'd forgotten that before he was a successful businessman, Cole Morrison had been a ranger. And rangers never left anyone behind, especially when they'd been betrayed. Chapter 4. The Hunter's Assessment. Detective Ray Hoffman arrived within an hour, his weathered face grim as he read Brooke's letter. He and Cole had served together in the same unit in Afghanistan, and Ray understood exactly what kind of man he was dealing with. "I've already started pulling financial records," Ray said, settling into the hospital chair. "But Cole, I need to tell you something. The amount of planning this took, the legal documents involved, this isn't just adultery. This is sophisticated financial fraud." Cole's expression remained calm, but Ray caught the predatory stillness that had made Cole legendary in their unit. "What's the damage?" "Preliminary review shows about $15 million in assets have been transferred to shell companies in the past 6 months. Your wife's signature is on everything, completely legal from a technical standpoint, since she was authorized on most of your business accounts. Travis Kellner, Cole said quietly. You know him. I know of him. Third-generation real estate family. Brooke mentioned him a few times, said he was helping with some property evaluations. Cole's jaw tightened. I ran background checks on every contractor, every employee, every business partner. But I never thought to check on my wife's clients. Ray leaned forward. Cole, there's something else. We found evidence that this relationship goes back at least 10 months. Credit card records show hotel stays, restaurants, trips to Chicago when your daughter was competing in debate tournaments. The pain medication couldn't numb the rage building in Cole's chest. Emma's debate tournaments. Brooke had insisted on going to every one, said it was important mother-daughter time. She'd been using their daughter's activities as cover for her affair. Where are they now? Flight records show they left for the Cayman Islands this morning. Kellner owns property there. Cole closed his eyes, thinking, Ray, I need you to do something for me. Officially, you're investigating financial crimes. Unofficially, I need every piece of information you can get on Travis Kellner. His business, his family, his weaknesses. Cole, 20 years, Ray. 20 years, I gave her everything. I built that company for her, for our kids. And she tried to take it all while I was unconscious on an operating table. Ray had seen that look before, in Kandahar, right before Cole had tracked down an insurgent cell that had killed 3 of their men. What are you planning? I'm planning to get my life back. And I'm planning to make sure they understand what happens when you betray a ranger. Don't do anything that'll land you in prison, brother. Cole's smile was thin and cold. I'm not going to break any laws, Ray. I'm going to do something much worse. I'm going to destroy them legally, systematically, and completely. Over the next 2 days, while Cole recovered in the hospital, Ray's investigation uncovered the scope of the betrayal. Travis Kellner wasn't just a successful real estate agent. He was a predator who'd done this before. 2 other wives of wealthy men had divorced their husbands after brief relationships with Travis, walking away with substantial settlements that somehow found their way into Kellner family investments. But more importantly, Ray discovered something else. Travis's business partner, Derek Walsh, had a gambling problem, a serious one, with connections to people who didn't accept late payments kindly. When Cole was released from the hospital, he went home to an empty house. Brooke had taken jewelry, clothes, and several pieces of expensive art. But she'd left behind something much more valuable, her laptop, which she'd apparently forgotten in her haste to escape. Cole smiled as he powered it up. His wife had always been careless with technology, and Cole Morrison was about to remind her that carelessness in war could be fatal. Chapter 5. The Web Begins. From his study, Cole could see the construction crews working on his latest development project through the window. Life was continuing, but everything had changed. He'd been discharged from the hospital 3 days ago, and the financial damage assessment was complete. Brooke and Travis had stolen $18 million from various Morrison development accounts. But they'd made mistakes. Cole's laptop showed a secure video call connecting. Derek Walsh appeared on screen, looking haggard and nervous in what appeared to be a hotel room. Mr. Morrison, I don't know why you wanted to meet, but I need to be clear that my business relationship with Travis is completely legitimate. Mr. Walsh. Cole interrupted, his voice calm and measured. I'm not calling about your business relationship with Travis. I'm calling about your debt to Vincent Torino. Derek's face went white. I don't know what you're talking about. $78,000. Owed for 6 weeks now. Vincent's been very patient, but from what I understand, his patience has limits. Cole leaned back in his chair. I also understand that Vincent's collection methods can be unpleasant. How do you? I know a lot of things, Derek. For instance, I know that Travis promised you'd be able to pay Vincent back once the Morrison development acquisition was complete. I know you've been skimming from client accounts to make partial payments. And I know that Vincent is planning to visit you personally if you don't settle your debt by Friday. Derek was sweating now. What do you want? I want Travis Kellner to understand that actions have consequences. And I want you to help me teach him that lesson. Cole had spent the previous day making calls, using connections from his military days and business relationships he'd built over 20 years. Vincent Torino was a legitimate businessman who happened to run a private lending operation with flexible terms and inflexible collection policies. Derek Walsh had borrowed money to cover gambling losses, using Travis as a reference. "I can make Vincent's problem go away," Cole continued. "But you're going to do something for me first. I'm not going to help you hurt Travis. I'm not going to hurt him, Derek. I'm going to educate him. There's a difference." Cole slid a document across his desk toward the laptop camera. "This is a partnership agreement between Walsh Financial Services and Morrison Consulting, a new company I'm forming. You'll be my inside connection to Travis's operation. Every financial transaction, every client meeting, every business decision, you'll report to me. That's corporate espionage. No, Derek, that's survival. Because if you don't help me, Vincent Torino will collect his debt one way or another. And if Travis discovers you've been stealing from clients to pay gambling debts, your career is over regardless." Derek stared at the screen for a long moment. "If I do this, the debt disappears?" "The debt disappears, and you get a signing bonus of $50,000. "But Derek," Cole's voice dropped to a whisper, "if you betray me, if you warn Travis, if you try to play both sides, I'll make sure Vincent learns about every dollar you've stolen. And I'll make sure the state licensing board gets a very detailed report about your financial irregularities. You're blackmailing me. I'm offering you a choice. Work with me and rebuild your life. Work against me and lose everything." After Derek agreed and signed a partnership agreement electronically, Cole opened Brooke's laptop. His wife had been sloppy with her passwords, and he'd easily accessed her email accounts, social media, and financial apps. What he found there made his blood run cold. The affair had indeed been going on for 10 months, but the emails revealed something much worse. Brooke and Travis had been planning more than just theft. They'd been planning Cole's death. "The surgery is perfect timing," one email read. "Complications happen. Medical malpractice suits take years, and by then, we'll have everything transferred offshore." Another email from Travis. "Dr. Martinez owes me a favor from the casino. He can't guarantee anything will go wrong, but he can make sure certain medications are available if needed." Cole sat back in his chair, the full scope of their plan becoming clear. They hadn't just wanted his money, they'd wanted him dead. The only reason he was alive was because he'd specifically requested Dr. Reeves instead of using the surgeon Travis had recommended. His phone rang. It was Tyler, calling from college. "Dad, is everything okay?" Mom's not answering her phone, and Emma said she can't reach her either. Cole made a decision. His children deserve to know the truth, but they deserve to know it properly. "Son, I need you to come home this weekend. Bring Emma with you. There are some things we need to discuss as a family." "Is Mom okay? You're scaring me." "Your mother is fine, Tyler. But our family is going through some changes, and I want to explain everything in person." After hanging up, Cole walked to his safe and removed a small digital recorder. For the next 4 hours, he systematically documented everything. Brooke's letter, the financial theft, the emails about planned murder, Derek's cooperation agreement, and his own plans for what came next. Because Cole Morrison was about to wage a war that would destroy his enemies completely, and he wanted everything on record for his children to understand why it had been necessary. Chapter 6. The Children's Choice. Emma and Tyler arrived Friday evening, their young faces worried and confused. At 20 and 19 respectively, they were old enough to understand adult complexities, but still young enough to believe their family was unbreakable. Cole had prepared dinner, Tyler's favorite barbecue and Emma's preferred vegetable lasagna. He wanted this conversation to happen in a space that felt safe and familiar. "Dad, where's Mom?" Emma asked as they sat down. She had Brooke's green eyes, but Cole's direct gaze. "Tyler said she hasn't been answering calls. That's what we need to talk about," Cole said carefully. "Your mother and I are getting divorced." The silence that followed was deafening. Tyler set down his fork, and Emma's eyes immediately filled with tears. "What happened?" Tyler demanded. "You guys are fine. You've been together 20 years. Your mother has been having an affair," Cole said quietly. "For almost a year, with a man named Travis Kellner." Emma's hand flew to her mouth. "That's impossible. Mom wouldn't." "She would, and she did. But it's worse than just an affair. Cole took a breath. They've stolen $18 million from our family business. Money that was supposed to secure your futures, pay for college, give you the foundation to build your own lives. Tyler's face had gone from shock to anger. Are you serious? Cole nodded and pulled out printed copies of some of the emails, the ones about the financial theft, not the ones about planned murder. His children didn't need that trauma, not yet. They planned this for months. Every time your mother went to Emma's debate tournaments, she was meeting with this man. Every business dinner was actually time spent planning how to destroy our family. Emma was crying openly now. I don't understand. Why would she do this? I don't know, sweetheart. People sometimes make choices that don't make sense to the people who love them. Tyler stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. So what happens now? Are we broke? Do I have to drop out of school? No, Cole said firmly. You're not dropping out of anything. I'm going to get our money back, and I'm going to make sure you both have everything you need for your futures. Ow, Emma asked. If they stole $18 million. Let me worry about that. But I need to ask you both something important, and I need honest answers. Cole looked at each of his children. Your mother will probably try to contact you. She'll want to explain her side, maybe ask you to take her side against me. I won't stop you from talking to her. She's your mother, and that relationship is yours to decide. But I need to know, are you going to tell her what I'm planning? What are you planning? Tyler asked suspiciously. I'm planning to get our money back. I'm planning to make sure Travis Kellner faces consequences for what he's done. And I'm planning to make sure your mother understands that actions have consequences. You're talking about revenge, Emma said quietly. I'm talking about justice. There's a difference. Tyler returned to the table, his expression harder than Cole had ever seen it. What do you need from us? I need you to trust me. I need you to understand that everything I'm doing is to protect this family and secure your futures. And I need you to know that if you decide you can't support what I'm doing, I'll understand. Emma wiped her eyes. Mom really stole from us? From her own children? She did. Then she's not the person I thought she was, Emma said, her voice growing stronger. Do what you have to do, Dad. But be careful. Tyler nodded agreement. Just don't become someone we can't recognize, okay? Cole reached across the table and took their hands. I promise you that when this is over, we'll still be a family. A smaller family, but a stronger one. What he didn't tell them was that Brooke had sent each of them a text message that afternoon. Your father is having a breakdown. Don't believe anything he tells you. I'm coming home soon to explain everything. His children had shown him the messages before dinner, asking what they meant. They'd already made their choice about who to trust. And that gave Cole everything he needed to move to the next phase of his plan. Because the war was about to begin in earnest. Chapter 7. The Perfect Storm. 10 days after the surgery, Cole received a call that made him smile for the first time since reading Brooke's letter. Mr. Morrison, this is Travis Kellner. I think we need to talk. I imagine we do, Cole replied, leaning back in his office chair. What can I do for you, Mr. Kellner? I'm calling to discuss a reasonable settlement of our situation. Brooke and I are prepared to return a portion of the transferred assets in exchange for a clean break. No criminal charges, no lawsuits, no further harassment. Cole's smile widened. Harassment? I haven't done anything to you, Travis. You've been interfering with my business operations. Several of my clients have mysteriously canceled contracts. My bank has frozen certain accounts pending routine audits. And someone has been making inquiries about my family's company that have made some people very nervous. That doesn't sound like harassment. That sounds like due diligence. The truth was more complex. Cole had spent 10 days systematically using every connection he'd built over 20 years. A former Army buddy now worked for the IRS. A client whose house Cole had built was a federal judge. Another client ran the state banking commission. Cole hadn't asked anyone to do anything illegal. He'd simply shared information about his situation and let them draw their own conclusions about what required official scrutiny. Look, Morrison, I know you're angry, but this can be resolved professionally. Where's my wife, Travis? She's somewhere safe while we sort this out. That wasn't an answer. Cole heard Travis exhale slowly. She's with me. We're not in the country right now, but we can be back to finalize an agreement within 48 hours. Good, because I have a counterproposal for you. I'm listening. You and Brooke return every dollar you stole, plus 20% interest for my trouble. You sign statements admitting to financial fraud. You dissolve your partnership with Derek Walsh. And you stay away from my family forever. That's not going to happen. Then we'll do this the hard way. Cole's voice remained calm. Travis, do you know what a ranger's greatest strength is? What? Patience. We can wait weeks for the perfect shot. We can track an enemy for months before striking. And we never, ever give up. Are you threatening me? I'm educating you. Because you made a mistake, Travis. You assumed that because I built my business quietly and methodically, I was weak. You assumed that because I love my wife, I would be easy to destroy. You were wrong on both counts. Cole hung up the phone and immediately called Derek Walsh. It's time, Cole said when Derek answered. Are you in position? I'm at the office. Travis has been making calls all morning, trying to liquidate offshore assets. He's panicking. Good. Execute phase 2. Derek had been feeding Cole information for a week, and the picture was clear. Travis and Brooke were burning through money fast, living in expensive hotels and hiring lawyers to shield their assets. But they'd made a crucial error. They'd brought Derek with them to the Caymans, and Derek had access to all their financial systems. With Derek's help, Cole had been systematically calling in favors and applying pressure. Travis's family business was now under investigation by 3 different regulatory agencies. His offshore accounts were frozen pending money laundering inquiries. His business licenses in 2 states were under review. But the masterstroke was about to come. Vincent Torino is expecting a call from you in 1 hour, Cole told Derek. You're going to tell him that Travis Kellner guaranteed your gambling debt, and that Travis has been bragging about the $18 million he just acquired. You're going to suggest that Vincent might want to collect his money directly from Travis instead of from you. Jesus, Cole. Vincent's people don't mess around. Neither do I. Make the call, Derek, and then transfer yourself back to the mainland. Your part in this is almost finished. After ending the call, Cole opened his laptop and checked the hidden camera feeds he'd installed in Brooke's old office at their house. When she came back, he'd know immediately. Because Cole Morrison had been hunting the enemy for 10 days now, and he was finally ready to close the trap. Chapter 8. The Return. Brooke Morrison stood in the doorway of what had been her home for 15 years, her hands shaking as she turned the key. The house felt alien now, like a museum of a life she'd abandoned. But Travis had insisted they needed to retrieve certain documents before disappearing permanently. 5 minutes, Travis whispered behind her, scanning the empty driveway. Get the papers from the safe and let's go. What they didn't know was that Cole was watching from the office of his construction site 2 miles away, monitoring the camera feeds on his laptop. He'd been waiting for this moment for 3 days, ever since Derek reported that Vincent Torino's associates had made contact with Travis in Grand Cayman. Cole picked up his phone and dialed 911. This is Cole Morrison at 4847 Maple Ridge Road. I'm calling to report a break-in at my house. I can see the intruders on my security system, a man and woman possibly armed. They appear to be searching for valuables. He provided the address and hung up, then called Ray Hoffman. They're here, Cole said simply. You sure about this, brother? They broke into my house to steal documents. Everything after that is just self-defense. Cole drove home slowly, timing his arrival perfectly. As he pulled into his driveway, 2 police cars were already there, their lights flashing. Through the front window, he could see Brooke and Travis being questioned by officers. He walked into his own house as if he was surprised to find anyone there. Officers, what's happening? Cole asked, projecting confusion and concern. Mr. Morrison? We received a call about a break-in. These individuals claim to live here, but that's my wife, Cole said, pointing to Brooke. Well, my estranged wife. She moved out 2 weeks ago. He looked directly at Brooke, whose face had gone pale. I didn't know you were back in town, honey. Cole, we just came to get some personal items. Without calling, without asking permission, Cole turned to the officers. I changed the locks after she left. How did they get in? Travis stepped forward. Mr. Morrison, this is obviously a misunderstanding. I'm sorry, who are you? Cole asked, extending his hand with a smile. I don't believe we've been introduced. Travis Kellner. I'm Brooke's friend. Ah. Cole's smile turned cold. The boyfriend. The one who helped my wife steal $18 million from our family business. The officers immediately became more alert. Sir, can you explain what you mean by that? Cole pulled out copies of the financial documents Ray had prepared. My wife and Mr. Kellner have been engaged in systematic financial fraud for the past 10 months. There are active criminal investigations in 3 states and federal warrants for their arrest on money laundering charges. This was a slight exaggeration. The investigations were real, but the warrants didn't exist yet. But Cole was counting on Travis and Brooke not knowing that. That's not true, Brooke exclaimed. Cole, you're lying to them. Ma'am, please remain calm, one officer said. Sir, do you have documentation of these alleged crimes? Cole handed over a folder thick with financial records, email printouts, and Ray's preliminary investigation report. Everything's there. Bank transfers, forged documents, communications planning the theft. As the officers reviewed the documents, Cole watched Travis calculating options. The man was trapped and knew it. But Cole wasn't finished. There's something else, officers. I have reason to believe they're here to destroy evidence. My wife had access to a safe in our bedroom that contains business documents. I believe they're trying to eliminate evidence of their crimes. Is that true, ma'am? The officer asked Brooke. I was just trying to get my jewelry. The jewelry you stole when you abandoned your family? Cole interrupted. The jewelry that was purchased with money you later helped embezzle? Travis grabbed Brooke's arm. We don't have to listen to this. We haven't been charged with anything. Actually, Cole said, pulling out his phone, I believe Detective Hoffman has been looking for you. Cole had timed this perfectly. Ray walked through the front door exactly on cue. Travis Kellner and Brooke Morrison, you're under arrest for financial fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit theft. As Ray read them their rights, Brooke looked at Cole with something approaching hatred. You planned this. You knew we'd come back. I know you better than you know yourself. Brooke, I know you're impulsive when you're scared. And I know Travis is an amateur who makes mistakes when he's under pressure. This isn't over, Travis snarled as the handcuffs clicked into place. Cole's smile was genuinely warm. You're absolutely right, Travis. It's not over. It's just beginning. Chapter 9, The Reckoning. 6 months later, Cole Morrison sat in the courtroom as the judge read the sentences. Brooke received 4 years for financial fraud and conspiracy. Travis received 7 years for financial fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder. The emails about the plan's surgical complications had been discovered during the investigation. But the real justice had happened outside the courtroom. Travis's family business, Kellner and Associates, had collapsed under the weight of regulatory investigations. 3 generations of wealth gone in 6 months. Derek Walsh, who had cooperated fully with authorities, received probation and was rebuilding his life as a project manager for Morrison Developments. Vincent Torino had collected his debt from Travis personally, in a way that left the man requiring reconstructive surgery on his left hand. Cole hadn't ordered that to happen, but he hadn't shed any tears over it either. Now Cole stood on the construction site of his newest development, a luxury subdivision that would bear Emma's name. Morrison Developments had not only recovered from the theft, but had grown stronger. The notoriety of the case had actually brought Cole new clients who respected how he'd handled the betrayal. His phone rang. It was Emma, calling for Northwestern. Dad, I saw the news about the sentencing. How are you feeling? Like justice was served, Cole replied. How are you feeling? Relieved, I think. It's been hard, knowing Mom did those things. But I'm glad it's over. It's not quite over yet, sweetheart. What do you mean? Cole had received a letter from Brooke 2 weeks ago, written from prison. She'd begged for forgiveness, claimed she'd been manipulated by Travis, promised she'd changed. She wanted to see the children, wanted to rebuild their relationship when she was released. Your mother wants to see you and Tyler. She's written letters asking for visits. Emma was quiet for a moment. What do you think we should do? I think you should make your own choices about your relationship with your mother. But I want you to understand something. Forgiveness and trust are different things. You can forgive someone for hurting you without trusting them not to hurt you again. Are you going to forgive her? Cole looked out over the construction site, watching workers pour foundations for homes that would shelter families for generations. No, Emma, I'm not. Your mother didn't just cheat on me or steal money. She tried to have me killed. She used your activities as cover for her affair. She betrayed not just me, but both of you. Some things are unforgivable. Even if she's really sorry, being sorry doesn't undo the damage. Being sorry doesn't bring back the trust. And being sorry doesn't change the fact that she chose to destroy our family for money and attention. Cole had made his peace with being seen as unforgiving. He'd built his entire life on loyalty, on keeping his word, on protecting the people he loved. Brooke had shattered all of that, and some breaks couldn't be repaired. Tyler had already decided he wanted nothing to do with his mother. Emma was still conflicted, but Cole could see her resolve hardening as time passed. That evening, Cole sat in his study, looking through the financial reports Ray had compiled during the final investigation. The total recovery had been $22.3 million, more than had been stolen, thanks to assets seized from Travis's family business and penalties imposed by the courts. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The children need their mother. This vendetta of yours is hurting them. When I get out, I'm going to fight for custody. They deserve better than a father consumed by hatred. Cole smiled and typed back, "Good luck with that, Brooke. I'll be sure to show the judge the emails where you plan to murder me." He blocked the number and deleted the conversation. Cole Morrison had spent 6 months systematically destroying everyone who had betrayed him. His wife was in prison. Her lover was in prison and financially ruined. His family business was stronger than ever. His children understood exactly who their mother really was. The war was over, and Cole had won completely. But more importantly, Tyler and Emma had both decided to transfer to state schools closer to home. They wanted to be near their father, wanted to help rebuild the family business, wanted to be part of something strong and permanent. Cole poured himself a whiskey and walked out onto his back deck. The oak trees he'd planted 20 years ago swayed in the evening breeze, their roots deep and strong. Some people might call him ruthless. Some might say he'd been too harsh, too unforgiving. But Cole Morrison had learned long ago that mercy was a luxury you couldn't afford when people tried to destroy everything you'd built. He protected his family, secured his children's futures, and eliminated every threat to their security. And if that made him the villain in someone else's story, Cole Morrison could live with that. Because in his own story, the only one that mattered, he was exactly who he'd always been, a man who protected what was his, who kept his word, and who never, ever forgot a betrayal. The foundation was solid. The family was safe. And Cole Morrison was home. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. The kitchen smelled like pine needles and roasted coffee beans when Brett Snyder walked through the door, his arms loaded with grocery bags. Lyle, his 8-year-old son, sat at the counter doing homework, his pencil scratching against paper with the kind of focus Brett always admired. "Dad, what's 12 times 7? Lyle asked without looking up. "What do you think it is?" Brett set the bags down and began unpacking. Lyle scrunched his face. 84. Show me your work." The boy flipped his notebook around, revealing neat rows of addition. Brett nodded. "That's right. You didn't need me at all. I just wanted to make sure." Lyle grinned, that gap-toothed smile that made Brett's chest tight every time. Brett had met Carolyn Stevens 6 years ago at a community college where he taught evening welding classes. She'd been a single mother, working 2 jobs, struggling to make ends meet with a 2-year-old son. Their first conversation happened when she picked up Lyle from the campus daycare, and Brett was leaving his classroom. She dropped her keys, and he'd helped her gather her scattered belongings while Lyle watched with curious eyes. "You're the teacher," Lyle had said back then, pointing at Brett's name tag. "That's right, buddy. Can you teach my mom? She cries sometimes about money." The honesty of children. Carolyn had gone red, but Brett had just smiled and offered to help her apply for grants and scholarships. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into weekend trips to the park. Within a year, Brett had fallen completely in love with both of them. He never cared that Lyle wasn't biologically his. The boy's biological father, some guy named Rich Powers, had disappeared before Lyle was born, moved to another state, changed his number, wanted nothing to do with responsibility. When Brett proposed to Carolyn 3 years ago, he'd gotten down on one knee in front of both of them. "Lyle," he'd said, "I'm asking your mom to marry me, but I'm also asking if I can be your dad. Not just mom's husband, your actual dad. What do you think?" Lyle had launched himself into Brett's arms, and that was answer enough. The problem was Merle Stevens. Carolyn's mother had made her disapproval clear from day one. Brett came from nothing, a foster kid who'd aged out of the system, put himself through trade school, built a small but successful custom metalwork business. To Merle, who came from old money in Connecticut and married Bruce Stevens, a retired investment banker, Brett was beneath them. A charity case her daughter had settled for. "You could have done better," Merle had told Carolyn at their wedding reception, loud enough for others to hear. A real provider. Someone from a good family. Brett had ignored it then. He ignored it when Merle forgot to invite him to family gatherings. He ignored it when she bought Lyle expensive gifts with cards that said from Grandma and Grandpa, but whispered to the boy that your mother's side of the family provided everything nice he had. What he didn't ignore was teaching Lyle values. Hard work, honesty, standing up for what's right, being kind but not weak. "Dad," Lyle's voice pulled him back to the present. "Are we really going to Grandma Merle's for Christmas?" Brett paused. The edge in his son's voice wasn't lost on him. "Your mom wants us all together. Family tradition. Grandma doesn't like you." "What makes you say that?" Lyle shrugged. "She's mean to you. She says things." "Like what?" "Like, last time, she said you were lucky mom gave you a chance. That most women wouldn't want someone who lived in foster care." The boy's eyes met his, searching. "What's foster care?" Brett sat down beside him, choosing his words carefully. "It's where kids live when their parents can't take care of them. I didn't have a mom or dad growing up, so other families and group homes raised me. That's sad. Sometimes. But it made me strong. Made me appreciate what I have now." Brett ruffled Lyle's hair. "You and your mom are everything to me. You're everything to us, too." The front door opened, and Carolyn walked in, shaking snow from her coat. She worked as a nurse now. Brett had supported her through school, and she'd flourished. "It's really coming down out there," she said, then noticed the tension. "Everything okay?" "Fine," Brett said. "Just talking about Christmas dinner." Carolyn's expression tightened. She knew what that meant. They'd had this argument 3 times already. Her mother had been increasingly hostile, and Carolyn was caught between loyalty to her husband and not wanting to break ties with her family. "Mom promised to behave," Carolyn said quietly. Brett didn't argue. He'd learned that Merle's promises meant nothing. But he also knew something Carolyn didn't. He'd been preparing for this Christmas dinner for months. Because last time he'd visited the Stevens home to pick up Lyle from a weekend visit, he'd overheard Merle on the phone in her study. "I'm going to tell him at Christmas," she'd said to whoever was listening. "That boy deserves to know Brett isn't his real father. Maybe then Carolyn will wake up and leave that nobody." Brett had stood frozen in the hallway, his heart hammering. Then he'd quietly walked away and begun planning. The next morning, Brett took Lyle to his workshop, a converted warehouse on the edge of town where he ran Snyder Custom Metalworks. The space smelled of iron, oil, and creativity. Half-finished sculptures lined the walls. A 10-foot dragon commissioned by a hotel in Denver, an intricate gate for a mansion in Aspen, a memorial piece for the city park. "Can I try the small welder?" Lyle asked, pulling on safety goggles that were comically large on his face. "Not until you're 10, like we agreed. But you can sketch designs." While Lyle drew at the drafting table, Brett worked on his latest project, a custom fire pit for a client in Boulder. The physical work helped him think. He'd built this business from nothing, taking on small jobs at first, building a reputation for quality and artistry. Now he employed 6 people and had orders backed up for 8 months. His phone buzzed. A text from Connie Stevens, Carolyn's younger sister, mom's on a warpath. Says she's tired of pretending Brett's family. Just a heads up for Christmas. Brett had always liked Connie. Unlike her mother, she'd welcomed him immediately, even stood up for him when Merle made her snide remarks. She was married to a guy named Sean Woods, a photographer, and they lived simply despite having access to the Stevens money. That fact alone drove Merle crazy. Thanks for the warning, Brett texted back. I'm ready. What does that mean? You'll see. He pocketed the phone and looked over at Lyle, who was deep in concentration on his sketch. The boy had drawn a robot holding a heart. Simple. Innocent. Perfect. That's great, buddy. Who's it for? You and Mom. Because you guys have big hearts. Brett's throat tightened. This was why he'd fight. Not for himself, but for this boy who saw the world with such pure eyes. Merle wanted to poison that with her bitterness and snobbery. Not on his watch. That afternoon, Brett drove to downtown Denver and parked outside a small office. Inside, a woman named Jody Blair waited, a private investigator he'd hired 2 months ago. She slid a folder across her desk. Everything you asked for, Jody said. I have to say, this is one of the more interesting cases I've worked. Brett opened the folder. Inside were documents, photographs, bank statements. His eyes scanned the contents, and he felt a grim satisfaction. Merle Stevens had secrets of her own. Big ones. This is solid? He asked. Documented and verified. The question is what you plan to do with it. Brett closed the folder. I'm going to give someone a choice. Change or face consequences. And if they don't change, then they'll learn that underestimating people from nowhere is a mistake. Christmas approached like a storm. Carolyn grew more anxious, trying to smooth over tensions that couldn't be smoothed. She'd call her mother, come back from the conversations looking exhausted. She promises it'll be nice, Carolyn said one evening while wrapping presents. I'm sure it will be, Brett lied. He wasn't worried about himself. He was worried about Lyle. The boy was smart, perceptive, and Merle's cruelty would hurt him. So Brett had done something he'd never imagined he'd do. He prepared his 8-year-old son for battle. Not with anger or bitterness. With truth. Lyle, come here a second, Brett had said 2 nights ago. They'd sat in the living room, the Christmas tree lights casting soft colors across the room. I need to talk to you about something grown up. The boy had climbed onto the couch, sensing the seriousness. You know, I'm not your biological father, right? Lyle had nodded slowly. Mom told me. She said my birth dad left before I was born. That you chose to be my dad. That's right. And I did choose. Every single day, I choose to be your dad. There's no difference to me. There's no difference to me either. Good. But here's the thing. Sometimes people don't understand that. Sometimes people think biology is more important than love. Grandma Merle is one of those people. Lyle's expression had darkened. She's going to say something mean about it. Isn't she? I think so. At Christmas dinner. What should I do? Brett had taken a breath. This was the moment. You should tell the truth. But there's a specific truth I think Grandma Merle needs to hear. Something about her own family. He'd explained carefully, making sure Lyle understood. The boy had listened with wide eyes, then asked, Is that really true? Every word. I have proof. And you want me to say it? Only if you're comfortable. Only if she says something first. I would never ask you to be mean, Lyle. But standing up to bullies, even when they're family, that's important. Lyle had considered this seriously, the way he considered his math homework. Finally, he nodded. Okay, Dad. I can do it. Now, as Christmas Eve turned into Christmas morning, as they loaded the car with presents and drove toward the Stevens mansion in Cherry Hills, Brett felt the weight of what was coming. Beside him, Carolyn hummed along to carols on the radio, oblivious. In the back seat, Lyle sat quietly, his small face reflected in the window. You okay, buddy? Brett asked, meeting his eyes in the rearview mirror. Lyle gave a small nod, then a smile. A brave smile. Brett's heart swelled with pride and protectiveness. Whatever happened today, they'd face it together. The Stevens house rose before them, a sprawling colonial with columns, perfectly manicured even in winter. Merle's Range Rover sat in the circular driveway next to Bruce's Mercedes. Connie and Sean's modest Honda looked out of place beside the luxury vehicles. As they walked to the door, Carolyn squeezed Brett's hand. Thank you for doing this. I know Mom can be difficult. Family's family, Brett said. For now. Merle opened the door wearing a designer dress and a fake smile. Carolyn, darling, and little Lyle. Come in, come in. Her eyes barely acknowledged Brett. Brett. Merle, Merry Christmas. Inside, the house was a showpiece. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, a Christmas tree that looked professionally decorated. Bruce Stevens sat in the living room reading the Wall Street Journal. Connie and Sean were in the kitchen helping with dinner preparations. Uncle Sean. Lyle ran toward the kitchen, and Brett followed, leaving Carolyn with her mother. Connie pulled him aside while Lyle and Sean played with the camera. You seem calm, she whispered. I am. That worries me more than if you were nervous. Brett smiled. Trust me. Dinner was set for 6 o'clock. The dining room table could seat 12, set with china that probably cost more than Brett's first car. Merle had positioned everyone strategically. She and Bruce at the heads, Carolyn and Brett on one side, Connie and Sean on the other, Lyle at the corner near Merle. The meal started pleasantly enough. Bruce asked about Brett's business, and Brett answered politely, mentioning the Denver Hotel Commission. How nice, Merle said, her tone suggesting it was anything but. Manual labor must be so satisfying for you. It is, Brett agreed. Building things with your own hands, creating something permanent. Very satisfying. Not everyone can appreciate such simple pleasures, Merle continued. Some of us prefer intellectual pursuits. Carolyn's fork clinked against her plate. Mom, I'm just making conversation, dear. The tension built slowly, course by course. Merle made subtle digs about Brett's clothes, his truck, the fact that he didn't go to college. Each comment designed to diminish him in front of Lyle. Brett took it all calmly. He'd endured worse growing up in foster care. Merle's barbs were nothing. Then came dessert. Elaborate tiramisu. Merle served everyone personally, her movements precise. She'd been drinking wine steadily, and her filter was slipping. Lyle, she said, placing a plate in front of the boy, you're getting so big. 8 years old now. Yes, Grandma. You look more like your mother every day. A pause. Nothing like Brett, of course. But that makes sense. The table went silent. Carolyn's face paled. Mother, don't. Merle ignored her. You should know the truth, Lyle. You're Stevens through and through. Your father, she gestured dismissively at Brett, isn't your real father. You should ask your mother about that. You're different from them. You're one of us. An outsider to that life. The words hung in the air like poison. Lyle looked at his grandmother with his clear, 8-year-old eyes. Then he looked at Brett, who gave him the smallest nod. I know Dad's not my biological father, Lyle said calmly. Mom told me when I was 6. Dad told me too. We talked about it lots. Merle blinked, thrown off her script. Lyle continued, his voice steady. Dad said biology doesn't make family. Love does. He chose to be my dad every day. That makes him more real than someone who just made me and left. Well, that's... Merle started. And Grandma. Lyle's voice was still calm, but now it carried something else. The truth Brett had given him. Dad also told me about your real father. How Grandpa Bruce isn't her biological dad either. How your mom had an affair with the gardener. And that's why you look nothing like the man you call father, who's been dead 20 years. How you've been living a lie your whole life, pretending to be something you're not. The room exploded into chaos. Merle's face went white, then red. How dare, that's a lie. But Bruce was staring at his wife with a dawning horror. Merle, what is he talking about? Connie gasped. Is that true? Merle stood up, so fast her chair fell backward. Her eyes were wild, filled with tears and rage. You? She looked at Brett, who sat calmly, not a shred of triumph on his face. You did this. You poisoned my grandson against me. I told him the truth, Brett said quietly. The same truth you were about to tell him. That biology doesn't define us. That secrets don't stay buried forever. That people who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Merle's mouth opened and closed. Then she turned and ran from the room, sobbing. They heard her bedroom door slam upstairs. Bruce stood slowly, his face ashen. Is this true? About Merle's father. Brett pulled out his phone, opened a folder, slid it across to Bruce. Birth certificate. DNA test results from 1968 that your father-in-law kept hidden. Letters from Merle's mother to the gardener, a man named Eddie Spears. I have a private investigator who can verify everything. Bruce stared at the documents, his hands shaking. Then he looked at Carolyn. Did you know about this? No. Carolyn looked shell-shocked. Brett, how did you? I knew she was going to pull this, Brett said. The cruelty toward Lyle. The constant degradation. I heard her on the phone planning this moment. So I did some digging. He looked at Bruce. Your wife has spent decades judging others for not being good enough when her entire identity is built on a lie. Her mother was a housemaid who married up and had an affair. Merle's been terrified someone would discover the truth. Connie was shaking her head in disbelief. That's why she's always been so obsessed with bloodlines and breeding. She's been overcompensating. Sean put his arm around his wife. This is insane. Lyle, who'd been quiet since his revelation, looked up at Brett. Did I do okay, Dad? Brett pulled his son close. You did perfect. I'm proud of you. But Grandma's crying. Sometimes the truth hurts, especially when you've been running from it your whole life. Bruce sat back down heavily. He looked at the documents, then at Brett. What do you want? I want Lyle to grow up knowing he's loved and worthy, regardless of DNA. I want my wife to not be caught between her mother's toxicity and her family. I want respect. Brett's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. Well, I don't want us to expose this publicly. That's up to you and Merle. You're blackmailing us? I'm giving you a choice. Merle can accept that family is about love, not bloodlines. She can treat my son, her grandson, with the kindness he deserves. She can treat me with basic human decency. Or, Brett shrugged, the truth can come out. I have no problem with people knowing. But I imagine she does. Bruce's jaw worked. You're not what I expected. No one from foster care ever is. Carolyn was crying now, and Connie moved to comfort her. The Christmas dinner had imploded spectacularly, but Brett felt no guilt. He protected his son. That was all that mattered. The aftermath of Christmas dinner rippled through the following days. Bruce had gone upstairs to talk with Merle, and when they'd emerged hours later, Merle looked like she'd aged 10 years. She didn't apologize. Brett didn't expect her to. But she'd left the house without another word. Carolyn had been devastated and furious in equal measure. You used our son, she'd said in the car ride home. I prepared him for the truth, Brett corrected. She was going to hurt him, Carolyn. You know she was. So you hurt her instead? I showed her that cruelty has consequences. There's a difference. They'd argued for hours that night while Lyle slept. But eventually, Carolyn had admitted what she'd known all along. Her mother had been poisonous, and something had to change. Now, 3 days after Christmas, Brett sat in his workshop when his phone rang. Bruce Stevens. We need to talk, the older man said. Can you come to the house? Merle's agreed to a conversation. Brett almost said no. Then he thought about Lyle, about the future, about setting boundaries that would last. I'll be there in an hour. The Stevens mansion looked different in daylight without the Christmas decorations' false cheer. Bruce answered the door himself, looking tired. She's in the study. Merle sat in a leather chair. Her perfect composure cracked around the edges. When Brett entered, she didn't look up. Sit, Bruce said, gesturing to another chair. We've been talking. A lot. Brett sat, waiting. Merle finally spoke, her voice hoarse. My mother told me on her deathbed. About Eddie. About the affair. She made me promise to never tell anyone, to never let it get out. So it would destroy the family name. So you built your entire personality around being pure-blooded Stevens, Brett said. Ironic. I was terrified, Merle whispered. Every day, I was terrified someone would discover the truth. That I'd be exposed as a fraud. So you projected that fear onto others. Made them feel small so you could feel big. Yes. Bruce leaned forward. Brett, what you did at Christmas. It was calculated and harsh. But you were right. Merle has been cruel to you and to Lyle. That stops now. Words are easy, Brett said. I know. Merle finally looked at him. I don't expect forgiveness. But I'm asking for a chance. To do better. To be better. Brett studied her. He could see the fear still there, the shame. Part of him wanted to twist the knife deeper. But another part, the part that had survived foster care, that had built a life from nothing, that had learned forgiveness from Carolyn and innocence from Lyle, that part knew revenge was hollow. Here's what's going to happen, Brett said. You're going to get therapy. Real therapy, not just to save face. You're going to work on why you feel the need to diminish others. Merle nodded slowly. You're going to treat Lyle with love and respect. No more comments about biology or real family. He's your grandson. Period. Yes. And you're going to respect my marriage to Carolyn. I'm not going anywhere. I'm family, whether you like it or not. I understand. Brett stood. If you slip back into old patterns, if you hurt my son again, I won't hesitate to release everything I found. Every document, every DNA test, every letter. Am I clear? Crystal clear. Bruce walked Brett to the door. You're a harm man. I'm a protective father. There's a difference. For what it's worth, I respect what you built. The business, the life. I was wrong to judge you. Brett shook his hand. We're all wrong sometimes. It's what we do after that counts. Driving home, Brett felt the tension he'd carried for months finally ease. He'd protected his family. He'd set boundaries. He'd shown that kindness wasn't weakness, but standing up to cruelty wasn't cruelty itself. It was justice. New Year's Eve arrived with fresh snow and new possibilities. Brett and Carolyn had worked through their issues, and she'd finally admitted that her mother's behavior had been unacceptable for years. The confrontation, though painful, had been necessary. I'm sorry I didn't protect you both sooner, Carolyn had said. I kept thinking she'd change on her own. People rarely change without a push, Brett had replied. Now, they were hosting their own celebration, Connie and Sean, a few friends from Brett's business, and of course Lyle. The house was full of laughter and music, a stark contrast to the tension of Christmas. Lyle was showing Sean's camera to another kid from his school, explaining aperture and shutter speed like a pro. Brett watched his son with pride. He's resilient, Connie said, appearing beside Brett with 2 beers. Kids are tougher than we think. He shouldn't have had to be tough. Maybe not. But you gave him the tools to stand up for himself. That's worth something. They clinked bottles. Have you heard from your mom? Brett asked. Connie nodded. She started therapy with a real psychologist. I think she's actually trying. Good. Brett. Connie hesitated. What you did, the investigation, the confrontation, it was extreme. It was necessary. I know. And honestly, someone needed to stop her. She's been a bully for decades. Connie smiled sadly. But I have to ask, did you ever consider that maybe you were using Lyle to fight your battle? The question hit harder than expected. Brett took a long drink before answering. Every single day since I planned it. And here's what I decided. If I'd confronted her alone, she'd have dismissed me. She always has. But Lyle saying it? A child telling the truth with innocent honesty? That cut through her defenses in a way nothing else could. Was it fair to him? I don't know. I told him the truth, prepared him for the possibility, and let him choose. He could have said nothing, but he wanted to stand up for our family. Brett looked at his son across the room. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure he knows he's loved and protected. If that's the price for stopping Merle's poison, I'll pay it. Connie squeezed his shoulder. You're a good dad, Brett Snyder. As midnight approached, they gathered in the living room. The TV showed the ball drop in Times Square, but Brett was watching his family. Carolyn laughing with friends, while making everyone count down in silly voices, the warmth and love filling their modest home. 10, 9, 8. Brett thought about the year ending. The battles fought, the truths revealed, the boundaries set. 5, 4, 3. He thought about Merle and her mansion, facing her own demons finally. About Bruce discovering his wife's secrets. About Carolyn free from her mother's manipulation. 2, 1. Happy New Year. Confetti flew. People cheered. Lyle launched himself at Brett and Carolyn, hugging them both. Best year ever, the boy declared. Carolyn kissed Brett softly. New beginnings. New beginnings, he agreed. January brought cold clarity. Merle called on the 5th, asking if she could take Lyle to lunch. Just the 2 of them. Carolyn had looked at Brett. What do you think? I think we asked Lyle. They had, and surprisingly, Lyle had agreed. She's still my grandma, he'd said with the wisdom of someone far older. Maybe she needs another chance. So Brett had driven Lyle to a restaurant downtown and watched from his truck as Merle met them outside. She'd hugged Lyle, really hugged him, and the boy had hugged back. When Brett picked him up 2 hours later, Lyle was quiet in the car. How was it? Weird. She cried a lot. Said she was sorry for being mean. Asked me about school and my friends. Lyle paused. She asked about you too. What did you tell her? That you're the best dad in the world. That you teach me stuff and play with me and help mom when no one else would. Lyle looked at Brett. She said she was wrong about you. That she was scared and mean because of her own problems. What did you say? I said everyone makes mistakes. That's what you always tell me. But you have to fix them and do better. Brett pulled over, his eyes suddenly wet. He looked at this incredible 8-year-old who'd been through so much and somehow remained kind. You're right. That's exactly right. Are you crying, Dad? Little bit. It's okay. You told me crying doesn't make you weak. Brett laughed and pulled his son into a hug. When did you get so smart? I learned from you. Over the following weeks, something remarkable happened. Merle actually followed through. She attended therapy weekly. She called before visiting instead of showing up unannounced. She asked about Brett's business and seemed genuinely interested in his answers. At a family dinner in late January, at Brett and Carolyn's house this time, Merle brought a gift. A photo album. I made this, she said, handing it to Lyle. Pictures of your mom growing up and pictures of you. All the moments I should have cherished instead of criticizing. Inside were photos spanning decades. Young Carolyn, older Carolyn, Lyle as a baby, Lyle and Brett together. And on the last page, a new photo, Christmas dinner, right before everything exploded. The whole family around the table. Merle had written underneath, family isn't about perfection. It's about love, forgiveness, and second chances. Thank you, Grandma, Lyle said, hugging her. Merle looked at Brett over the boy's shoulder. Her eyes were red, but she smiled. Thank you for not giving up on us. Brett nodded. He'd won, but not through destruction, through truth, boundaries, and yes, a little calculated exposure. But ultimately, he'd won by being exactly what Merle had claimed he couldn't be, a good father, a strong man, and someone worthy of respect. Spring arrived with renewal. Brett's business had landed a major commission, a full sculpture garden for a private collector in Vail. The project would take 6 months and pay enough to secure their financial future. Lyle was thriving in school, his confidence growing daily. He'd started a kindness club with his friends, inspired by everything that had happened at Christmas. We're going to make sure no kid feels left out, he explained to Brett, because everyone deserves to feel like they belong. Carolyn had been promoted to head nurse at her hospital. She'd also started setting firmer boundaries with her mother, not cutting her off, but making it clear that Brett and Lyle came first. I should have done this years ago, she'd admitted. I was so afraid of losing my family that I almost lost the family I built. Merle continued her therapy and had even started volunteering at a foster youth organization. To give back and face my prejudices, she'd said. The change wasn't perfect or complete, but it was real. Bruce had surprised everyone by apologizing to Brett personally. I let Merle's snobbery influence me. You've proven yourself 100 times over. I'd be proud to call you son. The words had meant more than Brett expected. One Saturday in April, Brett took Lyle to the workshop to work on a special project, a metal sculpture of a family tree, with each member's name welded into the branches. Who should we put on it? Lyle asked. Everyone who matters. Mom Yumi, Grandma and Grandpa Stevens, Aunt Connie and Uncle Sean. Brett paused. Even Grandma Merle. She's trying. What about my birth dad? Rich Powers. The question surprised Brett. They didn't talk about Rich often. Do you want him on it? Lyle thought carefully. No, he's just biology. You're my dad because you chose me. That's more important. Brett's chest tightened. You're wise beyond your years, kid. I learned from the best. They worked together, cutting and welding, building something permanent and beautiful. As the sculpture took shape, Brett reflected on the journey. He'd come from nothing. Foster care, no family, no advantages. He'd built himself up through hard work and determination. When he'd met Carolyn and Lyle, he'd found a family he'd always wanted. Merle had tried to destroy that with her cruelty and snobbery. She'd weaponized biology, class, and shame. But Brett had fought back, not with violence or destruction, but with truth and strategy. He'd exposed her hypocrisy, set firm boundaries, and protected his son. The victory wasn't in Merle's tears or embarrassment. It was in Lyle's confidence, in Carolyn's liberation from manipulation, in the family they'd built together, surviving stronger than before. Dad! Lyle's voice interrupted his thoughts. What are you smiling about? Just thinking about how lucky I am. Because of us. Because of us. They finished the sculpture as the sun set, casting long shadows across the workshop. The metal tree gleamed, each name shining bright. It's perfect, Lyle declared. Almost, Brett said. He picked up the welding torch one more time and carefully added one more element to the base. The words, "Chosen family is real family." Lyle read it and grinned. Can we put this in our yard? Absolutely. That night, they installed the sculpture in the front yard of their modest home. Neighbors came out to admire it. Carolyn cried happy tears. Even Merle, who'd been invited over, stood quietly studying it. It's beautiful, she finally said. The craftsmanship is remarkable. Thank you, Brett said. She looked at the inscription at the base. Chosen family is real family. She met his eyes. You've taught me that. The hard way, but you taught me. We all learned something, Brett said. That's what matters. As everyone dispersed and the stars came out, Brett and Lyle sat on the porch steps, looking at their creation. Dad, if you could go back and change things, would you? Brett considered this. The pain? The confrontation? Your grandmother's cruelty? Yeah. No, Brett said honestly. Because it led us here, to this moment, this family, this understanding. Sometimes you have to fight for what you love. And sometimes the fight is messy and hard. But it's worth it. I think so too. They sat in comfortable silence, father and son, watching the metal tree catch the moonlight. In the distance, they could hear Carolyn singing in the kitchen, preparing dinner. Brett Snyder had come from nothing and built everything. He'd faced down snobbery and cruelty with intelligence and strength. He'd protected his family, set boundaries, and emerged victorious, not through destruction, but through truth. And in the end,